There it is. All right. All right, folks. Without further ado, welcome to the workshop. First, I will start with the land acknowledgement. We see these a lot whenever we do events or we go to public like gallery openings and whatnot. And basically we do these got popular. We saw these more after the Truth and Reconciliation report was released in 2015. And it's just a way to remind ourselves of the indigenous peoples and their place here. So St. Michael's print shop recognizes that it resides and conducts activities on Uktahunguk and interacts with the unceded territories and land of the Beothuk, Mi'kmaq, Innu, and Inuit of this province. St. Michael's commits to uplift the voices and follow the lead of indigenous communities working towards decolonization and to do important anti-racist work in the shop and our community. St. Michael's commits to confronting settler colonialism in an effort to decolonize its space and structure while prioritizing the safety of indigenous peoples and artists. Pardon the little phone ringing in the background if you can hear it. St. Michael's is very popular. That's okay. You probably, I don't know if that's gonna reach outside the door. They're very popular now during Infest. There you go. You should see what this looks like. A bit about me real quick. So I grew up in Texas, but my mom's from Newfoundland. So we would always come back and forth during the summers. And I came up here to go to MUN in 2014, and this is my home base. I completed the 4-year Bachelor of Fine Arts program out at Grenfell. And I like dabbling in painting, printmaking. I like digital tech. I think, what was that, last year? Maybe 2 years ago. I graduated in 2020, and a lot has happened since. But I did work with St. Michael's, I think in 2021 for a bit as their social media communications person. I've helped them with some other workshops. I've worked at Eastern Edge, which is just downstairs. It's an artist-run center. I've done a little bit with the rooms, and I like to bop around, and usually I'm more involved with boards and committees now. So I actually really appreciate being invited to this workshop because it's rekindling my desire to come to the print shop. But mostly what I do now is I work with a lot of equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives here in the province. Like I said, I love sitting on boards and committees and, you know, working behind the scenes of these kind of centers. I was very humbled to have been nominated and selected for the 2024 Patron of the Arts from Arts and L for my advocacy and inclusion work in the province. It was very exciting. And I'm currently just started a Master of Employee Relations. Random to go from art to employee relations, but I'm interested in the policies and how people work together, specifically in nonprofits and cultural organizations. So that's what I'm doing right now. And right now I currently work with the 2025 Canada Games with their HR department as an assistant. So that's everything I think I got on me. I've got a couple of pictures here as proof that I do these things. This image up here in the corner, I'd like to credit Ethel Brown for taking that picture. This is a wood block, so it does have a different texture than what we'll be doing today. And I'll talk more about that later. This is my artist bio really quick. You know, this talks about what I kind of went through there. I like painting if I had to pick, but I do like drawing and printmaking, specifically relief. I have done some etching and some litho, but I think I really appreciate the ability for, you know, Lino to be very accessible, and you can do it anywhere in your kitchen, in your living room, or in the print shop. So here I've done a couple things in the past. I've done some workshops and supported St. Michael's with some of their community activities there. And these pictures are from Noah Bender. Thank you for that. And I love this. I love working with the community when they come in and this is all totally new to them. And once they see that final result, once you pull it off the press, the oohs and ahs are extremely satisfying. So hopefully we get some of those today. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, I will do a quick background on the print shop. This is from their website. It says that St. Michael's exists to develop and grow printmaking as a participatory, and accessible art form. So honestly, I wish I could give you a tour. Maybe I can after. But I'm in kind of this office space here. And once you step outside this door, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 presses. Relief is here. litho is here, and there's a screen room in the back with the gallery. So it's a really fun space. It's cool. This, well, here, I'll tell you on this next one. St. Michael's started in 1974. And originally that was, the whole shop was out in St. Michael's. This is a rural community down the southern shore, down off the Irish Loop. And I actually have a friend, and her aunt lives in the old print shop right now. And it's got these big windows attached to the house in this building. And even still, there's still print supplies and the presses in there. I think it was up for sale not too long ago, and I wish I could have gotten it. It is a very nice location. But in 1986, they relocated and came here. And this place, if you're in here and you look up to the ceiling, you can see these old, like, I don't even know what to call it, like bars or runners where they would put the sails. And so this was an old sail loft, and they would repair and work on those. And once upon a time, right now there's Harbor Drive, which I'm looking at right now, but that wasn't always there. So it was, this whole building called the Baird Building was right on the water, and people would just pull their ships in way back when, and it was just right there. Of course, this now St. Michael's is pushed, there's a road there, but it's all artificial. So it is a cool space in here. It has quite the story. And it's 50 years old. It's very exciting. St. Michael's has published 2 books, hosted 270 visiting artists, has awarded 29 Don Wright scholarships, and has a wicked print archive. And some of the print archives live over at the university, so they can be cared for over there. You know, temperature control, et cetera, et cetera. That's over 3,500 prints. And you can actually come to the shop, and they've got these pull-out drawers, and you can flip through all these prints, and some of them are for sale, but a lot has happened here. So here's the team really quick. We have Christine Francis, who's our director. We have Luca, who's our project manager. Drew, who's just helping with the phone there, is the admin and communications coordinator. Georgia doesn't work here right at this moment. She was here for the past year or so, I believe. Please correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. Tina has admitted to let somebody in here. And then Margaret. Margaret is the current shop tech. This is Margaret, and that's Georgia. So pretty good sized team. And earlier I mentioned the Don Wright Scholarship. So I'll talk about the programs that they have here really quick. They have a visiting artist program. So every year they invite people from all over the place who want to come for a month. And they do that 6 times throughout the year. The Don Wright Scholarship is a bit more specific in that it's for people who have recently graduated. The focus is just to provide them year-long access because they're emerging, recent grad. They're able to mentor, host workshops and classes. Yeah, it's kind of like a scholarly kind of artist program here. Then, of course, there's tons of workshops like this, in person, online, throughout the community. The St. Michael's has traveled over to the West Coast before. They have the traveling print station, and they go around with that. Same thing, they went up to Bonta Vista, probably, I think that was around Union House Arts, I believe. So they keep busy. Panel talks, the studio membership is available, but you can come up here, anybody can come up here and chill and work and carve and learn about the space without a membership. They also have some great merch. I'm going to slip that in there because the merch is really nice, actually. And they do all kinds of things. So it's Inkfest. This is the 2nd iteration of Inkfest. It's a new festival that they've worked up and built, which is fantastic. Here's their schedule if you're not aware. Today's Thursday. I'm in here, we're in this block here, doing our workshop. And Friday's going to be action-packed as well. This is online. This is also online for my folks who are coming in distance. And right now, out there, we go out there later, there's these big wooden blocks, and people can sit around them and carve them. And then on Sunday, they are going to roll them up, ink them up, get a giant sheet of paper, lay it over out in the parking lot, weather permitting, and use a steamroller to roll back and forth over it and reveal the print. And people like that a lot. It's pretty cool, actually, to see them go on this steamroller. And all of these are at either St. Michael's Print Shop or online. Now, I'm going to move in here to just a quick history of the linoleum and relief block printing. So this has been around for a long time. If anything, the best example of the earliest iteration is Chinese woodblock printing. I will send you a copy of the slideshow so you can check out the links after. I think they just linked to the Asian American History or Art Museum. Anyways, but they are really interesting. And I do have a picture, but it's hard sometimes, especially through Zoom, because you really want to be able to zoom in. And the detail in these old relief printings are awesome. Now they were using, wood back then. But the method essentially is you're carving an image into a block of wood or some kind of firm material. You're applying your ink, putting it on the paper, and applying that pressure just to transfer the carved image into the paper. So here's one of those, oops. You know what? I know what's happening here. I apologize. I got these Bluetooth headphones. Let me just put them in because my computer keeps getting confused. I'm just going to check this really quick. I want to make sure. Can you hear me all right? I can't see any of you. We good? Okay, I see you. Okay, great. Yeah, so like I was saying, the detail is awesome. We will test out some techniques today to try to get this detail. But of course, the great part about printmaking is you can carve something once and make as many copies as you want. Now, there does come a point when, if you try to make 100 copies of something, the pressure from the press and over again, your block might degrade a bit over time. But that's what I love about printmaking is that it's great for mass distribution. Here we are. Linoleum, however, which, I know you can see me, but I do have a second camera and I'll set that up after. But if you can see me, here's this sheet of gray flooring stuff. And I do have a picture in the slideshow. This was invented by Frederick Walton in 1860 as a floor. So this is literally floor covering. But it wasn't until kind of the early 1900s that people were like, whoa, we can use this and carve this. Artists liked it because it was soft, it was easy, versus wood, which, the good thing about linoleum is you can go, and we'll test it out after, but you can go any direction. Whereas if you have a piece of wood, you are often limited to the grain of the wood, carve on this side or that side. And I think the biggest frustration is when I'm carving a piece of wood and you're trying to do this line and all of a sudden the chunk flicks off because that's just the nature of the wood. So linoleum really kind of solved that issue. And this is essentially your typical lino print. It has crisp edges, it's bold, it's very graphic. And in terms of, key artists here, we have a couple of famous ones, I suppose, that we know. Of course, there's Picasso, and there is German expressionists really like using lino as well. Ernest Ludwig Kirchner, I do have an example. Picasso played around with lino cuts in color in 1950s and 60s. So there's Ernest there. So again, and his, it's up to you if you want to have a more sketchy look or something that's a bit more crisp. And that's the beauty of the lino as well. And here's Picasso's, for example. So he's added colors, and everybody kind of has a different technique when it comes to inking. Today I'm just using one color, a color red, but you can brush on color specifically and then print it and just brush it thin and print it. Different colors, like here. I will get into the different forms. You can carve away. Say you start with one image of this lady's face and you do the black first. Well, maybe you have a second block that's just all the orange. And so you would print your black, let it dry, print your orange on top, and then maybe you got a third block that's yellow, all the yellows in the picture, put that on it. So there's a layering process. You can also reductively remove bits. So say you carve the line of the black first, you will carve away whatever you wanted to be the next color. So these are pretty interesting. I actually hadn't seen very many of these in my art history classes, but they are interesting. They still kind of have that sketchy look. And here we are, what I was just saying, single color lino cuts, you know, just red or black, one image that you carve in, and that's it. The reduction technique is printing the layers and carving away. So when you do that reduction technique, you only kind of have one goal, right? Like you say you were making 20 copies. You would print, you know, say that I got this fish. You print all of your fish, black or whatever color you want. But if you have to do this technique, you would take it away, but you wouldn't be able to get it back, essentially, is what I'm saying. So you would print 20 with just your black layer and then carve away once you're sure you're done. And then take that new layer that you carved away, put whatever color you want on that, and print that on top of all the 20. So there's a lot you can do with the lino. It's pretty fun. Some reductive work looks very, very cool. I highly recommend you Google that one and you can see what's going on. Multi-block, again, kind of like what I said. Multi-block I find is a little tricky because if you're particular about having things line up, you know, you would have to do the work to ensure that once you lay it on the printing press, it's in line with your previous print, etc., etc., especially if they're different shaped blocks. But of course, you can go more organic, and maybe the whole point is that it doesn't line up, and that can be pretty cool looking too. So real quick, the materials and the tools. I know some of you guys have received these printmaking kits that have the supplies in them, but for those of you who don't have them, I'm still going to run through what we've got and what the typical tools are. And they're, we can get them at Michael's, Amazon. Say Michael's now has a supply shop out here, which is fantastic. So you can get some supplies from there as well. So, of course, we're working with our lino sheets. We have our carving tools, and there's all different kinds that we'll talk about. Your ink roller, your brayer, your printing press, or your hand burnishing tools, like a spoon or a little roller to roll the ink on. Sometimes you can take that and press on it and, put the weight on your lino to print it. We won't be using a press today. We're going to do this the old-fashioned way, very organic. We're going to use our hands and a spoon. Oh, I don't have a spoon, but that's okay. That's all right. The texture with lino, interestingly enough, and speaking of tools, I got my tools here. If you were using wood and you were carving away with the wood, and if you were carving for months and months, your tools are going to get dull, and it's going to be obviously harder to carve it, and you'll be able to tell that difference as you work. With lino, what's great about this is that lino is made of all these little tiny little bead bits. And interestingly, you carve on the lino, and it kind of like helps keep your tools sharp. So that would be another perk of the linoleum too. I haven't sharpened my tools in a hot minute. That's a whole other topic. There's different ways to do that, but I digress. So specifically, if you guys got the box, this is what we're working with. We've got a print, ink, and any color you want. This is water soluble, and I like using water soluble, especially if I'm at home. It dries quick and it's easy to clean. Oil-based printmaking is more for like etching or intaglio. It's a little bit, it's a different process there. We've got our carving tools, and there's all different kinds. I really should. Afterwards, I'm going to change the camera, and I'll show you all the different supplies so you can see a bit better. But for now, I'll just stick to the slideshow. So we have our carving tool. It can be from Speedball. Oops, too fast. Or another brand. There's all different sizes. Your hand roller or brayer, and there's also another thing called Baron, and we'll look at that. The spoon, which you can use that too, and lots of people everybody got a spoon, but what's cool about that is you kind of take the spoon and you go in circular motions, and you're rubbing. The goal is to make sure that all areas of your lino carving print on your paper. And sometimes if you have a lot of details, it can be hard, and that's why sometimes you got to push. But it's a fine line, because sometimes if you push too much, you might lose some of the detail. If you over ink, you might lose that detail. It could be bubbly. We'll talk about all that. So what have we got? We got a few sheets of paper. The kits have 5x7, but it can be any size. We're just testing. So I have a couple of sheets there. A couple of sheets of scrap paper. A pencil, pen, or Sharpie, a reference image, or at least an idea. Sometimes I know people can throw it out on the spot. I did email out a couple images, and I apologize because I realized that whatever way I saved the St. Michael's 50th logo, it's a bit blurry. But the key is to make sure that your image is flipped, especially if it has text. Because if it's not, it'll print backwards. I don't know what I'm going to print yet. I'm going to have to make it up as I go. The carving block. So we do have a few options. We have the spink. See, my tea is sitting here full glass. Probably have some of that caffeine. Pink speedy carve. And that was what was mailed with your kit. But then, of course, we do have that gray lino. Wood, like a plywood. The pressed wood is okay, but again, we got to be mindful of what kind of look we want. The material will determine the look of it, and I'll show an example. But again, just bear in mind that the wood will flake and there's splinters, and whereas the cleanup is definitely a bit friendlier with the lino and the pink speedy carve. And also MDF, that one I really like. I've got some of that here. I used to go to Home Depot, and they've got giant sheets of MDF, but if you go in the back corner, they have like smaller squares, and then you can cut them up and do whatever you want with them. But I like MDF too, and it's nicer on your tools, similar to lino. It's made up of all these little press bits, these little press things, and it's soft, it's easy to carve. If you're someone who likes to work quickly like myself, I would go for the pink speedy carve, the lino, or the MDF, because you can carve it a bit faster. It's a bit more fluid. The thickness also kind of matters. MDF is usually thicker, like this. The pink speedy carve is pretty good. Flimsy. The lino is also pretty okay. I wouldn't want to go any thinner than this. And the thinner it is, you don't have to carve as deep because you're likely to go too far, right? And you'll end up having this fibrous background coming through the front. This is, what even is this? I think this is, I don't know if this is MDF technically, or if it's just little bits of wood squished together. But it's okay, it's all right to use. Also from Home Depot. And that, I don't think I'd go any thinner than this. Now, if you're printing at home, you're only using your hands. But consider coming in and printing on a press. And that has a lot of pressure. So you run the risk of something breaking, if it's too thin. Also, just the longevity. If you want to print a bunch of things and it's really, really thin and you have it all carved out, well, over time, the stress of the press and printing might lead it to break or chip or anything like that. So I like to aim for about a ½ inch thickness, or just a whole inch. This one actually is probably the thickest one I have here. And this is a little different too, actually. This is a fun one. Sometimes, like if you go to Michael's, you'll see like mounted linoleum. And it's not gray like the floor, or it's kind of like an MDF. So, but you'll be able to see, like there's a line separating it. So the top layer is different than the bottom. It's the same difference. I mean, it does sometimes comes down to personal preference and what you're trying to print. But that's like an inch thick, so that's okay too. Wax paper and parchment paper. Now I say that today for my folks who had the kit and who are at home, because we got to ink up somewhere. Now this is a sheet of plexiglass, and that's what I'm going to be putting the ink on and rolling and stuff. If you don't have anything like that, sometimes people use the glass from a picture frame. I have what else do I got? I got this kind of like a plastic lid. I'll show you an example if I can grab it. This kind of like a plastic thing, something smooth and non-permeable. You don't want our ink to go through it. But, you also want to make sure if we're working with we're working with this block, and we've got our 5x7 paper, we want to make sure that whatever we're rolling this ink up on, we are going to do that tutorial. We want to make sure that, it needs to be big enough so that, let me back up actually, now that I think about it. The key is, I'm skipping a few steps, but the key is here. You want a roller or a brayer that is as wide as your, whatever it is you're carving into. And so what I'm trying to say is that when you get your ink, you want it to be enough so that your whole brayer can go over it. And I'm skipping steps, and we will get into it. But in case I don't remember to say it later, we want to make sure that our brayer goes over this, because say it's full of ink, right? And if it's only, say it was half the size of this, if it's half the size of this, and you can only do one side at a time, you're going to get the line from the edge of your roller in the ink, and it's going to show. It'll show that, oh, the roller wasn't big enough. Anyway, we'll get into that. I digress again. But yeah, if you don't have some kind of a hard surface to roll up your ink on, if you don't have a hard surface, you know, worst case scenario, I got a plate, it's got a muffin on it. Remove the muffin, and you could do that as well. Again, the little packets come with the water-based ink, so cleanup is pretty friendly. If you don't have anything hard, wax paper, parchment paper, maybe tape it down to help hold it still. Improvise, and that's what's kind of nice about printmaking. So here we are again. These are some better images. This is what the back of the Lino looks like, and so it's it is flooring, but it is great. I think I knew someone once, and I don't think it was the print shop, but somebody, they went to a carpet store and they ordered a whole giant roll, and that was perfect, so you could cut sizes out of it. And honestly, sometimes this floor stuff, this basic gray, is cheaper sometimes than getting a lot of this or a lot of this. So here's that mounted block that I was talking about. So it has this kind of a separation here. The Speedy Carve, the one thing I'll say about this Speedy Carve, which is really friendly, especially if you're just printing with your hands or rubbing the spoon. And it's not really an issue now because we're not using press, but if you do use a press, sometimes depending on the pressure, it's so squishy, it'll kind of like fan out under the press, and it could distort your image a little bit. So there are things to be mindful of depending on the material you use. But I do like the Speedy Carve. It's really soft. And so here's some better images here of the little things we'll carve with. So this is the hand roller. This is our brayer. This is a Baron. And it's, you know, I mean, this is in replace of a spoon or a press or hands. You just kind of take that and kind of go in a circle. I'm sure there's one out there that I might try to use. This is from Speedball. This guy's great. He's fine. I have one here. The key is, you know, you unscrew that. All the little bits live in here. And you just want to make sure that you get the bit in there and you screw it tight, because you don't want that to wiggle around while you're trying to carve into it. What's nice about this kind of a style is like it kind of fits in your hand nice. So, because imagine now you're carving for a long time. This will fit better with this end on it versus something like this. Now, these are your typical wood carving tools. And again, this is all from Michael's. These are the ones I like to use. They're small, but I'll show you later. These are from Lee Valley. So, you know, like wood carvers tools. And they also have kind of like this end on them, and so they're pretty good too. And there's different ways to hold it, and I'll demonstrate that as well. But I do find sometimes with these, I like to give my hand a break, maybe after, you know, an hour, kind of shake it out like that. In terms of Canadian, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, Rachel. We have a question in the chat about
Yeah.
just asking about whether the pink, whether the Speedball pink is as good as the blue.
Sorry? Oh, like the different color of the.
Yeah. So sometimes Speedball has. This is a question from Julia Purcell. Is pink lino as good as the blue lino? And I was about to message, just reply and saying that the pink is squishier than the blue from Speedball.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and yeah, I was gonna just ask what are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, like I think this is it. I only have one piece of these. Honestly, like I don't even know where this came from. If this is the same stuff, which I think it might be, it's more firm. So it's definitely not going to have the same squishiness and like risk of spreading out if you were to print it in a press. They're both soft. They're both going to be friendly on your tools. I guess it's a personal preference. Honestly, I prefer to use maybe the Lino or the MDF or something a bit more firm than the Speedy Card. I do like the Speedy Card because it's fast. The blue stuff, if anything, has a bit more firmness and body to it. Yeah, I will say. Also, sometimes the Speedy carve, sometimes I carve too fast because it's so soft. So versus wood that's kind of going to push back against you because it's wood. Just got to be mindful that when you use any of these Speedy carves, like we're going to test it out too, but sometimes if you press hard, you know, I've done it and I've gone too far. I've made my line too far, and you know, once your line is in there, it's in there. So my art, I used to have an art teacher in high school. She said we were not allowed to use erasers. We had to try to make something out of our mistakes, which is very nice. And I kind of still apply that ideology to the relief. But thank you for that question. I forgot I had this. And I don't know where I got this from. I obviously must have got it from St. Michael's. But yeah, they're pretty fun. If anything, it kind of has a more of a not as slippery texture. Yeah, personal preference, honestly, is what it comes down to. But thank you for that. I'm just throwing out a couple of Canadian printmakers here. Sybil Andrews and Walter J. Phillips. And I'll show you an example here. So here's Sybil's. These are cool, actually. So this is relief. And I can't really tell. It could be multi-block. I think it's multi-block. But you can also combine techniques. You can combine multi-block and reductive at the same time, right? So, but again, it has that graphic, stylized look, and that's what's very popular with Lino. Here's Walter's. Walter's is a bit more sketchy, but you can see here, I could see how this could be reduction. Now, I don't know if he's using Lino because it does kind of have that graininess there. And so here's this one. It's a bit more crisp. And yeah, like I said, like you can use wood. There's nothing wrong with wood. It will have a different look. It will be grainier. But I kind of like that sometimes. Lino cut remains popular in Canada. And there's artist centers similar to St. Michael's, like Opus Studio in Toronto, Malaspina Printmakers in Vancouver. They got a society over there. And there are several print places around. And pretty much the difference is, again, Lino's soft. It's easier. It doesn't have this texture. So this picture is Ethel Brown took that. That's from last year's Ink Fest. And oops, not getting into it yet. But yeah, I just want to show you the wood grain. And the thing is, like I did these birds a few years ago. And so if you can see, this is small, but you see these big chips out of here? These big chips. This was frustrating. This is old. These two are old. But what was frustrating here was that those pieces were flicking right off the plywood. And the same with here. Sometimes that's great if you're trying to clear a big area, but I did have an issue with it flicking off somewhere else on the bird, and I think I was just able to catch it and glue it back down. But also too, I mean, I kind of like this textury look here. Now, could I ink this up better? Yes. And you can tell because as we get down here, it gets a little lighter, see? Versus this is dark. So it comes down to uniform pressure when you're printing, and sometimes when you're printing with hand, it's hard because, you know, your hand gets tired or you're printing and, you know, you put more pressure in one corner than the other, and then that corner's darker, and then, but when we're using Lino, it's all the same. It's a consistent material versus wood. It's more organic. So it's a bit friendlier to different pressures. But yes, yeah, so yeah, I gotta say, the splintering is probably my biggest frustration. You kind of have to move with the wood, with the plywood, with the grain of the wood. If you try to go opposite, like up and down, it may flick off. So it depends on your piece of wood. Now we will get into it. I want to stop sharing. Do we have any questions? Not a question, but your Texas. Yeah, it comes on and off, the Texas Snoopy accent. Mom was a nurse. She went down in the 90s. She went down with a group of like 10 other nurses. So they kind of like raised me down in Texas in the 90s. So yeah, I've got a kind of a mixture there. Pink lino, blue lino, yeah. And you can see, I mean, I haven't spent too much time on Google looking at all the different options, but if I had to pick, I would pick either the gray flooring, the pink Speedy Garb, or the MDF in terms of friendliness and ease, on your wrists, et cetera, your hands. Okay. Pardon my tea here, which I think I might take a sip of. And also, if you have tea and drinks in your art station, just be aware that when we're carving things, especially wood, it might flick. Have I flicked pieces of the carving into my tea and coffee? Yes, I have. It happens. Just be mindful, that's all. Health and safety, That's what I do there on the side. Okay, now, I feel like, how like, I don't know if they got them anymore, but the little projectors in the schools, and you have the big lamp and the projector, and just like transparent sheet. I honestly miss those. These smart boards are cool and all, but I miss the old-fashioned projector until the light bulb blows out, of course. So just a little bit quicker here. Again, there's our brayer. That's a little close, isn't it? And again, it's a bit bigger. That's pretty much the same size as our sheet, and so it's really fitting over the entire thing. And when we get to rolling up, you want to do like roll. Now you don't want to stop in the middle, because you'll see that just like how you would see the line of the brayer not fitting over the entire thing. I want to show you my tools real quick, because they're a little different than the pink speedball one. So they come in this little kit. You can buy them individually too from Lee Valley. They're really nice. So they get pretty small here. I think my favorite kind of shape is, there's two different kinds. There's one that's, I don't think it's going to show, but let me see. There's one that's kind of like a triangle. So when you carve it, it's kind of like this. It's like that. And that's what the inside of the shape of this is like. And so that one's great for really fine lines. But I'm not the biggest fan. And here's a bigger one. So let's see, it's just sharper. Right? I really like the rounded ones. They kind of flow a little bit smoother. And so this is kind of a bigger one. And my tiny round one is the tiniest, probably not enough focus. And that is like, if you're doing hair or something like that. But yeah. And I mean, they look like they're frail, right? Like you could be carving and they would just snap. But that hasn't happened. That doesn't usually happen. They're pretty sturdy. Sometimes you'll see them and they're just a straight line. Like the tip of it will just be a straight line. That's a little bit more for like if you're like carving like a 3D wooden object. How do I sharpen them? Yes. Interestingly, I'll show you my face, I guess. I'm here. So what do they call? I'm probably gonna pronounce this wrong. Karen, correct me. Whetstone? Is it whetstone? You take this block. Yeah, I think, yeah. And it's gotta be wet. And you got this block, and you gotta like, I don't even know how to show you. I could get a block, I guess. And they gotta be wet, and it's just a lot of back and forth. So really, you're only sharpening this like outside edge. And that's right. So yeah, I see Sandra shaking her head. And so although, and then like I used to be like, okay, well, how do I sharpen the inside? Like this dip in here. And just by doing this back and forth on that stone with the water, you sharpen this outside bit, and in turn, it just makes a nice crisp point. Yes, I'll show you. I know, when I first saw this, I was like, what is this? What is this thing? I think what I might do, honestly, is get it on here. This guy here? Yeah. Pardon me while I do this. I got this like little tripod thing, and it's got really bendy legs. So I'm trying to figure that out here. All right. So this little guy, and he I put the box away, but so here he is. So he kind of comes like that. And so what I'll do first, actually, I'm going to unscrew the bottom of it and dump these guys out. So they live in there. And what kind do I want to use? They got different stuff. And you know what? This is a fantastic starter, simple carb. If you find that, you kind of want to mix it up with the different tips, then there are tons of tips out there. I probably will not go so small, but yeah, I'll use this one. This one is very tiny, actually. Decisions. These are all triangles. I thought I had a more of a rounded one. So you're going to loosen up. I'll loosen up that. And as it loosens, inside, you'll be able to see, so it's kind of like this rounder bit on the end. There's like these two pieces in there, and they kind of move around when you loosen it up. And you kind of want to situate it. I'm going to loosen up some more. So it's kind of like, it's almost kind of hard to see, guys, but. And then once that's in there, and put it all the way in so that this rounder bit goes in. If it's not going in, just loosen it up. You can loosen this piece right off, so that's all right. Once it's in there, however, see, give it a good twist, tighten it back up, and this is ready to go. So it's pretty convenient because you just get to have the one thing instead of having a box to carry around, that kind of stuff. How's that, Tina? Do you got it put together? So it is pretty friendly. And like this kind of piece, like this isn't usually the kind of piece I go for. Like maybe if you're doing hair or lashes, but it's going to be so. Now, Tina, if you want, you can turn the camera on. You can show them if you want to. Do you mean like the whole piece? Did the top come out? Let me see. I'm pretty sure I can like unscrew this. Oh, I see. Well, hang on. Let me run through it like the whole thing is disassembled. Okay, so scoot these bits over. So I've taken it completely apart. I've got this, and I got these two little bits. And all you got to do, honestly, you can put it together this way if you wanted to. You take that bit, take the rounder end of your carving tool. So this is the top because it's sharp. Put it on top of that. And this kind of other piece, this tiny guy, he just sits on top of that. So this is what he's like a sandwich. And then honestly, the easiest thing to do here, actually, let me think. I guess we can't do it that way because how would we get our piece in there? If yours is apart like this, Tina, put these two bits together, put them back together, stick it in the top here like this. And it's going to be loose, so you're going to have to use two hands. And then put the piece over the top, back on there. And so it's just going to live in there. And it's going to be loose, and that's okay. And then you screw it kind of back in, not all the way. Take our little guy, put him on in there. Oh, yeah, so I get the pieces stuck in the handle and put them in there. It was a tough little piece of tool, honestly, and they live in there. And then I put that back on, and she's ready to go. But yeah, make sure it's tight, but not so tight that it's too hard to undo it later. Tina, did that solve the problem? Now, right there, till I hear from Tina. Now, sometimes I like to wing it. Sometimes I like to have a printed image ready to go. Oh, also, okay, well, here's an example. I'll show you an example of some of the, okay, you keep me posted, Tina. And this is that pink speedy carb. Now, if you don't care about having pieces and the little flecks showing up, everywhere that black is what showed up on paper. So I kind of like the sketchy look to it, but if I was particular, once you carve, you want to, you can get rid of it even after, like that's the thing too. Once you say you do a carve, it's your first time, you do carve, we print it up, and there's something you don't like, but it's something that you can remove later. There's no problem going back in. and taking this off. Like mine is a bit messy, so I'll just take these bits off. Now don't carve in your hand like I'm doing. I'm just kind of doing this so you can see a bit better. And also, we don't carve towards us. No. So say you're doing this and you, oh my goodness, if you do that, the accidents that can happen. These things are not dull, they're sharp. So carve away. Let me actually get a piece here now. I'm going to use, I got a piece that's already dark because it is a little hard to see carving on like a light piece like that. So this, here we are. I colored it up so we can have an example. So the best way to like situate yourself with this is I like to hold my piece, you know. I'd like to, honestly, let me see here because you can't really see my hand. Maybe I'll try like this. All right. I like to kind of like hold, I don't know. I kind of got it in my hand. It's in my hand. I put it in the middle, grab it. The easiest way to control it is like not like this. It's too hard to carve with all your fingers back here. You gotta have at least this one. This is pretty typical. You're holding your block. You want to keep that still, and you're carving away. Now the other thing is kind of the angle. We're definitely not doing a 90, right? 80 is still a little bit too much because you won't really get as far. You'll kind of just flick and flick. If you're making snow, then it's kind of fine to do little flicks like that. But what we really want is maybe more of a 45-degree. And I'm pushing on this, guys. I'm pushing on it because this is MDF, so it's a little harder. I'm not gonna lie to you. This tip is a little bit dull. So I kind of am doing some wiggling here because it's a little bit dull. And like, this is fine for lino, the speedball. This tool in particular may not be very strong to deal with something like wood. So I'll just show you. I'll use mine because it's going to be a bit bigger. So here we are again. Follow the hand like that. Flip it down. Hold your piece, but mind those fingers. Kind of a 45. And honestly, like, let me see if I can get a bit closer. You're kind of like this, and you'll find it. You push on it, and you just kind of glide along. It's kind of going to stay, just keep gliding along this track that you put it on. Oh, I should probably sharpen all my tools, to be honest. And it kind of curls. If you're trying to like make a circle or something like that, the best thing to do is not to, turn it towards you, but it's okay to carve a little bit and move. My pieces are dull. Sometimes some people carve like this, like you're gonna hold like a pencil, but like I don't know, I find that a little limiting because if you had a huge block, like you kind of gotta like do your hand a little bit differently. So typically like this, there's nothing wrong with spinning your block, and say you're spinning and you're carving and you're spinning. So move the block. You can also move yourself if you got a table, but just be aware, try not to point it at yourself. And of course, you'll get your little tiny little bits here. I got one of them little mini broom dustpan sets from the dollar store, and I like to use those to clean up all my bits. Now, if you've got an image, just looking at the time here. How you doing, Tina? It's 3 o'clock. Sometimes you're doing okay, good. I know, the tool's a little, again, the tool is all about personal preference, just like the material. Now, I don't know what I want to draw, to be honest. I'm gonna back up a little bit and talk about the drawing part and materials. Sometimes, like, there's different ways to go about this. You could have a drawing. I'll do an apple. So I've got my apple. He's here. If I was using pencil and I had really drawn this really hard, there was enough graphite on it, draw it over, keep it like thick. You could take that drawing, flip it, put it on, and kind of like press it, and if you lifted it, you would probably have enough pencil show up that then you could go in with your Sharpie and trace it. I like to use Sharpie. It holds on pretty good. I just have a red one. I don't have a black one. That's all. But any color Sharpie, you can see. Another thing you can do too is you can say you made a shape. You can cut it out of the piece of paper, lay it on top, and just trace the shape onto the block. Of course, you can freehand. There are people that freehand and go right to carving, no drawings. I like to kind of have a sketch. Here's one. This is an old snail. I haven't carved him yet. And here's my snail, and I just did that in pen. It's pretty all right. Pencil's okay, but honestly, like sometimes, like once you say you did the pencil and you pushed it on there, and then you go over with Sharpie, there won't be much pencil left. Sometimes the pencil, it'll smudge around, right? And this is the thing. When you're carving, like there will be times when your arm might be on it and rubbing on it and your hands and everything. And so I do recommend a pen or a Sharpie to preserve your image. Maybe I should draw this apple. Let me see here. Oh my God. Oh, the other thing, and I think I may have briefly mentioned it earlier. This is a piece of lino, carved it. You can see it's kind of cool. You can see all the carves, But I carved it and it's backwards. Again, the key is to be mindful of what you're printing because like if I have an image on the computer, I'm going to flip it before I print it as a reference image because it has to, like I'm going to have to put this on here like this, which honestly, I think I might, I might try to print this on here. It's Newfoundland, but it's got to be backwards because once it's inked up, we got to flip it and roll it through. And I have done this before. You're drawing on top of the plastic with a dry erase marker. There you go. Yeah, you can find out different ways to do it. Everybody kind of has their preference. There's another method. Karen, what do you like doing? Is there a method where like you print something out from the computer and transfer it to the block? But I don't think that works with lino. I think that only works with wood.
It actually, I've done that with Lino before, but you have to make sure that you print it out in black with a printer that uses toner. So, like a copier or a laser printer. And then you can use a gel medium or something similar you put like a really thin layer on the lino block and then a thin layer on the surface of your paper and then press it down, use like a credit card or something just to get all the air bubbles out, get it nice and flat. You let that dry for a little bit. And then what I do is I take a damp cloth and I start to rub at the back of the paper. And eventually the paper starts to come up and you peel it off with your fingers in the rag. And you get the image is left there. So yeah, so it works.
So that's awesome. Yeah, I tried it once before, but I knew there was something. It's the toner that is the key.
Yeah, I haven't tried it with the pink rubbery stuff yet, though. I've tried it with lino. Does it work with woodblock?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Creating designs with silver and gold, fuming and glass blowing. Ooh, now that's something I'd like to do. I'd like to have a glass blowing workshop somewhere here in town to learn that because it's mind blowing. Yeah, so it is kind of nice to be able to like have an image, transfer it. You don't have to be a wicked drawer to do this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Let's see here. Now I'm conflicted. I thought I would do my Newfoundland, but I don't know if I will, honestly. I'm looking around this office. What do I got here? Shoot. This is the hardest part to me, honestly. Anytime there's a couple of locals I could do. James, that's cool, actually. The glass blowing. I really admire it. Yeah, that'd be great. But I find, honestly, never mind the printing and the carving, my biggest challenge is figuring out what to draw. Let's see here. I'll do something basic because I'm not focusing on that. I'm focusing on showing you the technique. This is a fish.
I have no idea what to draw. I've been
It is
searching on
hard.
Google. I'm like, what do I draw? Like lino
Well,
printing for beginners. What's easy?
well, you know what? I mean, we do have two sides. So long as you kind of like, if you can do one on this side, just not carve too deep. you should be able to flip it over and then make a second one on this side. So if anything, we got a test side to test things out. And if you don't like that drawing, you can definitely flip it over.
Yeah, I've just been doodling in my notebook trying to.
Like, I think I'm gonna keep it kind of blocky. And like you can do any image with Lino. You just like if you I really kind of like its potential with the graphic look. Now apparently I don't remember what a fish looks like, so there he is. I'll do a couple scales just so we can. And also like be mindful with this pink stuff. If you're using a Sharpie or a pen, let it sit for a minute before you put your hand on it. But sometimes it can smudge with this rubber. All right, so here's my fish here. Ah, a pair of fun shoes. Totally could have done my sneakers. The tool, I think I'll do a bit of both. I'm a little biased towards my own tools that I've bought. Just because I like those round tips. Like these ones are a bit more triangular, which is fine too, especially if you're doing like sharp corners, hair. I'm gonna put in a few lines. And you can get your details pretty small. I'm just keeping this big on here so that you can see it.
I like the one that was included in the kit for travel and having everything like pretty close by. But I like the idea of where you have them individually, so you don't constantly have to switch back and forth like from thick and thin lines and stuff. Like when you're in the mode, like
That's
I feel
right
like
too.
it'd be much easier having individual tools for that part.
That's true. I like that I can kind of just pick up and grab these, whatever size
Yeah,
I want. This
you
one,
don't really
yeah,
gotta
you gotta take it
stop your
apart.
flow.
Oh yeah. And like again, like there's kits of these that are like from Michael's. I don't know, maybe even like somewhere like Home Depot, but the small ones for carving wood.
When you
They
say
can be
Michael's, do you
relatively.
mean actual Michael's or St. Michael's print shop?
Oh, actual Michael's.
Okay, I'm in Stephenville. I'm on the West Coast, so
Mm.
we don't have anything. I have a Walmart next to me. That's it.
I don't think there's anything. I didn't think there's anything stopping you from going into the Grenfell store. If anything, they would have more print supplies. I'm pretty sure the public
Yeah, they
would.
do. A friend of mine, I got him to go look last year because I've wanted to do this for so long. I haven't done it since high school, which was
Mm.
like not yesterday.
Yeah.
And so I bought a kit off Amazon, but it was faulty and I sent it back.
Mm.
And then I never went back and got another one. And I got him to look last year, I believe, at the beginning of the school year to see if the gift shop had any, because
Yeah.
he's an hour away from me, but he could pick it up and I could get
Yeah.
it.
It's kind of
And
nice actually.
but yeah, I do
Did they
believe
have anything?
yeah, they had the gray lino
Hmm.
in a couple different sizes.
Oh yeah. And there are online art stores. Walmart will sometimes order things. Yeah, I forget about that too. Desayers. Let me see here.
Oh yeah,
See.
Montreal. Yeah.
Desayers, they ship. What's the other one? Oh, I'm having a brain fart. Curry's?
Yes,
Curry's.
think so.
Curry's. Of course, there's Amazon, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel really guilty ordering from
Yeah.
Amazon, and that's fine. But in terms of, I know it can be tough to get things. Like even when I was out on the, like when I was in Corner Brook doing the school out there, sometimes you want specific things and it's hard to get.
Yeah, and it gets expensive when there's not a lot of options, like
And trying to get it to like ship to you.
yeah.
Exactly. I mean, see, this is the thing, like the material, like it's easier to get wood. Opus, yeah, Opus, that's another one. It's easy to get wood, it's easy to get kind of the MDF, I mean, your hardware store, but this stuff is a bit more specific. And the linoleum is hard too, sometimes to get if you just have like a regular craft store near you or a hardware store. The tools, I find, if anything, probably are the hardest thing to get your hand on. Above ground, that's what it is. Yeah. And if you go to Michael's
Never
in
heard of
Newtown,
above ground or opus before.
I've heard of above ground. Is above ground the one that's kind of more print focused? He's a bit more general art supplies, but they got everything.
I'm writing them all down because my
Oh,
memory
yes. And
garbage.
I'll email a recording of this. You guys will have the copy of the
Oh, right.
recording.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
That's-
And I think you'll also get the above ground in Toronto. Yeah. Probably notes from the chat. I'll probably type those up. Yeah, Lee Valley is great. They got a website. Yeah. Yeah, these are, if you order from Lee Valley themselves, you'll pay a bit more for them, but you can get the same thing on Amazon. Honestly, it's not so, sometimes it's the tool, but it's really what you're doing with it. And what it really comes down to is the shape and the size of each bit. And yeah, I've tried getting a couple of the cheaper versions from Michael's or Walmart, or like, I don't know if the dollar store has carby bits. Either they'll break sooner or they just won't carve as smooth. But the good thing is if you're using this flexible stuff in Lino, you can get away with a bit more. It'll be easier for some of the cheaper tools to make it through it. Whereas these would probably be a bit more heavy duty for like serious planks of wood. So I got my fish. There he is. Now, I've noticed over time with myself, let me see if I can get this up here. I have my laptop sat on a block that I've been meaning to carve forever. What's that? Here. I sometimes gravitate towards being a type of printer that carves out the lines they draw. Okay. That's fine. Like everybody has a different style, depends on the look you're going for. I'm trying to challenge myself to, you know what, this is probably actually good too, because this is already kind of gray, so you'll be able to see what I'm doing. I'll do it right here. Yeah, on camera. There you go. I apologize for my folks with problem with motion sickness. I'm moving this camera around. All right, let's see. So this is going to look differently than if I do. Let's see here. Where are you? You can either carve out the line you've drawn, or what you'd usually see is, I also kind of like to have my other hand here to kind of help me from slipping around. Also, sometimes these Lee Valleys, you hold them back a little further, but that's okay. It's okay. It all depends on how you like to hold your pencil and your tools. By rights, the more common thing to do is, and see, I kind of got to manipulate the way I hold things. The cool thing is, this is MDF, so it's a bit soft, and I can just, I'm trying to do a rock, so it's got a roundness to it. I can just move my tool kind of where I need to go. It's kind of inconvenient to move a big piece around, so you can move your tool. And then I'll change my body, and now I'm leaning over here. So what I'm doing is I'm going to move away and remove the pieces that are outside of the line. I'm going to do it here. I don't know, fix it later, but just to show you. So this is kind of where it gets tough. And I think what I do, I think I carve away the line as opposed to carving out the line, because maybe I think my brain finds it a little easier to wrap my head around what the finished image will look like. Let me just figure this out here, and then I'll just hold it up so you can see. So if you carve out the line, yeah, see, this is exactly my challenge. My challenge is wrapping my brain around, okay, here I am carving out the line. So if I carve that away, only the line is going to be left, which is usually what most people want. The only thing is, like, by rights, I should be using a smaller piece, because now I've got this really thick line here. So if I wanted to like put textures on my rock, I kind of have to just, I kind of am stuck to only.
That's what I find hard too, wrapping my
Yeah,
head around it. Like thinking opposite of what we're used to.
exactly.
Even
It
when
is
I was
literally the opposite.
doing, yeah, when I was trying to do a backwards S earlier, I was like, come on, you can do this. It's just an S. Like I had to write an
Hard,
S like 4 times just to be like, okay, the backwards of this is this.
right? And I mean, that's the thing. It's sometimes you kind of got to make up your mind with how you want it to look as you go. I think I have a hard time seeing the final product, especially if I'm taking the line out. So because I carved it this way, like if I print it, this gray will be here and this black will be here and these little scratched away bits would be texture on my rock. And I can kind of like flick them away there and maybe my rock got some spots or something. Thank you, Roxanne. So there it is. So that's going to print really different versus how I've carved away the lines here. Now, you can do both in the same image. This is a crab. And I've looked at this on my desk for quite some time. It was nice to put the carver back to it again, but I can do this and carve out the line. But then maybe when I get to the crab, I want to do what I did here and carve around the line. So it really depends what you're going for. If I were to do this whole block and carve around the line, it would look like this drawing on another piece of paper. If I just carve away the line, you're going to have these circles and they're going to be like on this white space because only the inside of the circle is going to print or whatever I leave inside. So there's things to think about in terms of what do I want my final image to look like. I find that to be a challenge, honestly, sometimes. Which is why I kind of like using the cheaper print material like MDF from the hardware store. Because if I make a mistake, well, I can start over on another block. Sometimes, now I've never tried this really. Sometimes you can, if you cut a piece out by accident, you can kind of like glue it back in and smooth it down. But the risk you run there is that, well, you might have residue of glue. If there's even a speck of a woolly on your block and you go to print it, you're going to see it when we ink up. You're going to see it there. And you'll see it on your print. So the risk you run is if you take off a piece by accident and you try to glue it back in, you might have glue seep over the side. You'd have to smooth down. You might be able to tell it's probably going to be a little bit more raised than the rest of it. So when you're going over it with the pressure, you'll get like a bump where you tried to glue the piece back on. So once the mark is made, it's pretty much made. Now, and honestly, a lot of this is trial and error, figuring out, thank you for links, guys, figuring out what kind of what you want your style to be, how you want it to look. This is why this is still kind of round. So this is great because you can pick him up, you can move him, he's not heavy. I'm going to start it now. Oh, goodness, what do I want to do? Sometimes, honestly, I'll be honest with you, sometimes I like to, this is like butter. It's like butter. It is pretty nice. I gotta say, the speedy carve is nice, but to get a lot of it and in bigger pieces is pricier because it's so nice and so popular. That came right out like butter. That's, you know what, it's very satisfying to do this printmaking. If you're stressed, just print make. So just take it out on the block. And then I carve too. I like to kind of outline my shape first. So if you want to have maybe, like I could have bubbles in the background and all that, but I've just got this fish. So I like to kind of start, and you know what else too, I will say, sometimes instead of carving like this and going in towards the drawing, sometimes I'm afraid I'll go too far or my hand will slip. I like to kind of carve away to kind of reduce the chance of that happening. And once you link up with a different line you've carved, sometimes I find with the speedy carve, you kind of gotta clean it up a little bit. But what I like to do, I like to carve out my shape and then get rid of all the background I don't want. And this is a good starter tool. It's pretty friendly, it's pretty basic, but this is where maybe you'd want to switch and have a bigger tool because, as you can imagine, if you're just trying to clear the background away, the bigger tool it's gonna get that done faster. Let me see here. Yes, Lee Valley is, I do really like Lee Valley. It's not that there's a standard of tools or anything like that. You know, you use whatever works best for you and what you're trying to do. So I'm kind of like carving this away here, and it's making these channels. Hold on, get further. As you can see, it's a little hard to see because it's all the one color. And that's why sometimes, like, here's this other speedy carb. So this was inked once. So once you ink it, unless you clean it off with your soap and water, if it's water-based, it's gonna stay. So it kind of still has this weird stickiness. But you could do this, like, you know what I do with MDF? I take my MDF, I take ink and water, I water it down, and I brush it over the block and stain the top so that while I'm working, I can see what I'm doing. And I find that very, very helpful. Same thing with the crab. It's a little bit tinted. It's really helpful. Or else it's all just gonna be, I mean, you would be able to, you can tell, but not really. Like this is a mounted block. So by rights, I shouldn't be carving on this side. I mean, you know, it blends right in. So yeah. And in terms of the type, let's see how small I can get actually. Let me try out this little tiny guy so you can see him. Tiny, tiny. And he just makes this little curly. I like making these curlies. Girl, these are a tiny little line. And they come smaller than this, which is crazy. But I think now if you're working big, it wouldn't be so bad. But I like working kind of small sometimes. And similar to drawing, there's different methods. And so while you're listening to me talk, go ahead and keep drawing or carving out your drawing on your pink speedy card. But you can apply the same kind of drawing techniques that you use on paper to your printing. So I'm cross-hatching here, and it's way over there. And this is small enough that there's keeping in their own lane. I can feel as I go over the other lines I've carved, it kind of goes like dum 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 dum, speed bump. I'm not pressing too hard. Like I wish this camera could really zoom in good. You do not have to, especially with your speedy carve, because it's so soft. You don't have to carve out giant chunks like I'll do one here so you can get an idea. You're more likely to flick off the wrong direction by accident, and you're just going to make your whole arm tired if you try to carve a deep old thing like this. Like that's too thick, this piece I carved out of right here. And you know, and like sometimes, say for example, you're trying to get rid of this extra stuff because, you know, maybe you don't want that kind of sketchy look in the background. You don't have to do that by carving super deep. You're gonna tire yourself out. Another thing really quick, like if you're making little flecks, like stippling. I like stippling with pen. And you kind of do the same thing here. And you just go, boop, boop, boop. You see. This is actually pretty satisfying, actually. Boop, boop. I don't know if you can hear it. Now, only thing is you gotta brush it. Brush the little bits that don't come off on their own. And like I said earlier, it's MDF, and this speed carve is nice because there's no splinters. You can kind of carve anyway. Kind of wish I had a piece of wood so I could show you, and I'm sure I could get one. What happens when you go against the grain? So yeah, you can apply the same kind of drawing techniques. Now you can do that with a bigger one. You'll get bigger chunks. And a lot of times the piece doesn't come off, it kind of flicks up. You flick it off, but you kind of get this look to it there. What I need to do, because it's 3:20, I need to carve out my, well, you know what? I do have my other fish here. So yeah, if anything, the speedy carve, where it's so soft, I will stress again to be mindful of how much pressure you put because it'll just slip right away from you. Also, sometimes, like if you come to the print shop, for example, they have these blocks and back that up a bit. And so it's a block, it kind of looks like a really long, skinny S almost. And it's got a piece that you put down and a piece hangs over the side, kind of like that. And then it lays flat, and then there's a piece that comes up off. And essentially what it's doing is you put your block in that, and if you were working with something bigger or heavier and it's slippery, it's going to hold still. And it's going to push back against you because it's hooked on the edge of the table. And so when you push and you carve and you push forward, you're not going to have to like worry about it slipping around. But again, we're using this friendly speedy carve. And this kind of rubbery material kind of like stays still on its own. Boop. Yeah. So you do some carving. Yeah. And like honestly too, sometimes you'll find if you're trying to clear off your background, so say you don't want any of this here and you don't want it to print. Sometimes, here's my channels. So let's see here, make sure this camera can, let me try again. There's kind of these channels, and if I don't, sometimes you kind of got to go back over this ridge. So here's these ridges, and similar to this, there's, now you can really see them. They'll get ink on them, and they'll show up. And what I like to do is sometimes I may go over this whole background once, and then go back and get rid of the peaks of the channels, the ridges there, so that I'm certain that it's down low enough that it will not show up. We're essentially making a stamp is what we're doing. Now, I'm going to back up here now, keep carving, and I'll show you like we're inking up. Maybe I'll put this here actually. Beep. Okay, well, yeah. All right. So flicking off all my pieces, gone away now, or mostly away. I've got my, whatever I'm going to ink up on, this plastic sheet, or the plate, or a piece of glass. If you got glass, don't press too hard because, you know what, if we're using this speedy carve and this lino, you don't have to ink really hard, you don't have to roll up really hard. It's a friendly material, so you don't have to apply too much pressure. I got a napkin here. I got this wonderful water-based ink. So if I'm inking up, I got bits. Gotta make sure your station is free. All right, I'm gonna put this. I'm gonna put this right here. Actually, squeeze too much. It is kind of thick. It's not very, not watery. Now that might be too much ink what I've just put on, but that's okay. You can always add more. So I've got my ball of ink. I'm gonna move out of the way of the light here. Here's my guide. When we roll up our brayer, I'm just gonna start, I'm gonna dab a little bit, and I'm gonna put a little bit further down, a little bit further up. It is gonna have some grab to it. It's not like a watercolor. But what I want to make sure, what you want to make sure is that your rolled up ink can fit your brayer. Maybe a bit more on the side. So if you roll it, you'll be able to see it kind of like grab and stick to the roller, and you see this texture. It's going to sound like hissing snakes. But you don't want your snakes to hiss too loud. And then what you want to do, like see, I have too much ink on here right now. But that's okay because I'm just rolling it. And you can tell when you look at it if you have a lot of ink. You don't want like little globs of it. So it really is a bit much right now. And then you want to go the other way. You can go diagonal if you want. It's actually pretty okay. I'm getting a nice snake hissing sound. And you can see it fits my entire roller. So you got this rolled up. Now it's not going to dry immediately, but I'm not going to like leave this here and go away for 5 minutes. once you get this process started, it's pretty much it. Also, it's a good habit to roll, lift, woo, roll and lift, and you want to sure pull, sprayer, nice and covered. Now, so I'm probably going to do the pink stuff and I could back this up a little bit more. Yeah, that's okay. I'll start with the pink stuff first. So here's this fish. It is black because it was inked up once upon a time, which is not bad. Like if I wanted to go back and keep getting rid of where the ink is on the outside, if I wanted to be cleaner, then that's fine. It's okay. It's okay to leave the ink. This black isn't going to show up. It's old, it's dry. But again, you can wash it with soap and water if you want to. I'm going to use this. I'm going to put this on a piece of paper. Newsprint is your friend. Newsprint is great to have stuff to lay on and set your roller on when you're not using it. Also, if you're not using it, you can go ahead and put it upside down. It'll keep your area clean. So here he is. Now, the key again is starting at one end. It's okay. I'm going to roll it back a little bit. And we're just going to roll back and forth. The whole thing. You don't have to press crazy hard, but I can tell I kind of need more ink because you can still see the black kind of coming through. You don't have to over roll your roll up either because it's just going to spread out. So I'm going to roll more. And I'm not pressing overly hard. I probably got a bit much ink. I probably got a bit too much, but I'm used to working with oil-based ink a little bit more, I think. And so there are differences when you use it. And you can use oil-based ink with this kind of stuff, but you don't have to. I'm pretty sure this black fish, the black underneath, was originally probably oil. So we got them rolled up. Let's see what it looks like because it kind of has a texture. And also, uh-oh, somebody's coming in here. So kind of back to what I was saying earlier, you don't want to roll like this. You do not want to have, I'll show you here. You don't want to do that and then come over and do that because it might be hard to see. Where is it? It's hard to see because it's shiny. But there is a line in here. There's a line over here. And it goes along the length of the fish. Sorry, I have to leave. Bye, Roxanne. Oh, she's gone already. No, she's still there. Bye. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I'll send you the recording.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. And so yeah, it will have a line and that line will show up when you print. So I'm gonna go over here now and fix that. So I'm getting the whole thing. I mean, like in this situation, like the roller's it's not big enough, and that's okay so long as I go back and go over it. All right. Now I'm gonna flip my paper. Well, actually, you know what? Let me get a new piece of paper. Got my own scrap paper. It's not 5x7. All right. Yeah. Also, it's easier to take this and put it down as opposed to having this on the ground and putting your paper over. Because it's harder to tell where it's going to settle, especially if you're particular and you kind of want it in the center. Now, instead of just dropping it and letting it fall down, which, I mean, I don't think this is horrible, but you might have your ink splatter around. I'm just going to start, well, hang on, I'll do it this way. Start here. And sometimes, like, sometimes if I'm putting something in a particular place, I might use a little pencil to mark where I need to put down my stamp. But I'm just going to go ahead and put this down here so you can see. And I'm just going to let it fall down nice and put down. Now, this is probably going to end up being dirty and all that on the back side. So sometimes I put another piece of paper over it. Now I only have my hands. Oh, wait. My teaspoon. It's made of plastic. So it's probably not. It's going to get the job done. Sometimes you got to use what you got. If you got a spoon, I like to hold the spoon, put my finger in the middle of the spoon, and go in a circle. But make sure you hold it down. Sometimes it is easier to do this without the paper, but at the same time, I mean, you can't, my spoon is this rubbery speedy carb is kind of sticking in my plastic spoon. So I will put the piece of paper on. I'm just going to go in a circle. Now, it's just, in terms of like, you kind of want to keep that pressure kind of uniform, go to all the edges, because sometimes I forget about the edges and they end up being lighter. And the circular motion is pretty good. Kind of want to aim for uniform pressure. And it's not that you can't take your hand and press down on it, but I think you'd be more likely to distort it a bit more and you won't have as even a pressure. But again, this pink stuff is pretty friendly. See what happens. I may not have rolled it enough. Slip it straight up. Boop. Oh, that looks pretty all right. Now, you can kind of see where it's a little hard, but there's kind of like some white patches. So maybe I could have inked it up. See, kind of right down there. I could have inked it up a bit more, but I kind of like this. I like that it looks like a print. And here's kind of an example of what I meant earlier. So if I wanted just this fish here, I would, I wouldn't dab it off with a paper towel. You know, a paper towel leaves in bits, sometimes in fibers, so that's definitely not what you want. But you could wash it with soap and water, or a wet rag even if it didn't have little woolies on it, and dry it off, and then carve away the pieces that ended up sticking. So here they are, because they're covered in ink. So they're not, these pieces are at the same level as this fish. That's not what I want. I'd want to get rid of that. Now, say I've got a piece of ink or something I really don't want. And again, bear in mind this, you clean off your blocks in between printing sessions. Yes, do that, because if not, like, oh, there's like kind of like extra ink kind of like pooled along the edges. I think it could just be annoying if you went back later. Oh, and also in the channels, see how the red ink is in the channels? Yeah, if you didn't clean it off and you kept doing this over and over again, you're going to lose the details in those lines because they're going to get full of ink. So best practice is clean it off so that you're ready to go next time. You don't have any leftover residue around the edges to kind of deal with. If you did stop and let it dry, you'd likely be fine. But this water-based stuff, again, it comes up wicked with soap and water. Like after I finish this, I'll go dry it off. Say maybe you've got a bit of ink. I got a little bit here. I like the bits hanging around, but there's this speck I want to get rid of. Sometimes, say your ink is dry. Sometimes, depending on your paper, you can go in with ideally maybe an X-Acto knife, honestly, but I don't have that right now, so I'm just going to use this bit. And you just, it really depends on the paper. It really depends on what's going on. Depends on how thick the paper is, depends on what you're using. But what I've essentially done, and the problem is sometimes you can tell that you've done this. Also, good practice, don't use a pink eraser, because a pink eraser is going to leave that pink color on your paper. If you're in a pinch and you really, I poked the hole through it, so that just goes to show you how thin the paper is. Now, I'm sure there's printmakers who would see me do this and say, no, don't do that with your tool. I'm just doing this because I don't have my X-Acto knife right now. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm using the blade and I've scratched away a few spots, except this one that I poked through. But I have scratched away a few spots. So if you've done 20 prints, they're all dry, but you realize, oh no, I've got a smudge or something on the corner of one of the pretty white edges, you can go in, maybe with an eraser, but maybe with an X-Acto knife, honestly, and just scrape away a little bit of the paper. So that's as close to erasing as you're going to get once it's done. I'm going to do a really quick Newfoundland. So like, if I inked this up way more, personal preference, again, experiment with how much ink you do and don't want. I'm going to try this guy here. This old Newfoundland here, just to show you, because he's backwards. Now my ink, it's here. It's been sat to the side. It's okay. You'll be able to tell when it's dry. I'm going to have a little bit up here. I'm going to move down. And if you were to add more ink, I'll just put a little blob in the middle. Oops. How do you suggest store carved lino blocks after printing and cleaning them? All right, hang on now. I had this tripod. It's on my keyboard on my laptop, and it just typed in 100 zeros into the chat box. Whenever I do these kind of things, well, this guy, I think this is oil-based. I think I just kind of let that on there to dry after wiping it off a bit. When you get to like the gray material, it's just going to keep staining. Let's see, do I have my, oh, well, here it is. Pretty sure. Here, I'll show you. Here it is with Texas. So we got Texas and Newfoundland. It's going to stay this color. Even if I go and try to carve it away, not carve it away, I'm sorry, wash it away, it's still going to have a bit of a stain. It might come up a little bit lighter. And this may still hold on to that stain. But again, if I wanted to go, so all of these lines, everywhere you see black, ended up transferring to the paper. But yeah, so it will stay there, but once you print it again, and after a while and it's dry, you won't know. It'll be fine. Just like a stamp. Let me see here real quick how this. The store carved line of art. Oh, you asked to store them. Honestly, like I've got, what do I got? I throw all my print stuff in this plastic bin. Sometimes, depending on the ink, if it's oil-based, it might be a bit stinky. Often I like to wrap them with newspaper. Once they're dry, I wrap them with newspaper, and then I'll just store them. They'll be fine. They'll be fine. Like I have them in a stack. I got all my blocks in the stack near my canvases. I'm a bit dry on the ink here. And so at least if you wrap them in like newsprint, like honestly, I'll be honest, I got a corner in the shed, and there's some big planks of plywood over there that I carve into, and they're just, I mean, I have thrown those things around for years. I've just thrown them around, and they're okay. Also, if you're inking, and I got like a woolly in here now. I mean, I just scratch that out, put it away, but make sure you redo it. You want it to be nice and smooth. If not, you'll get little woolies, or the mark of the woolly, transferring to your sprayer that will end up sticking on your print. Oh my goodness, let me put this down to flatter. There we go. So I got my Newfoundland here, and I can already tell as I'm inking what's gonna show up. Now, if you wanted, like if this was really bothering me, I would take this, I'd go wash it off with soap and water, or I'd let it dry. It is pretty thin, it's just water-based. But even if I wash it off, I'll still be able to see where the ink's at. So I could go before I print this and remove that stuff and then just start over. And I guess that would save you the time of, and save you the piece of paper of printing it, because you kind of already know as you ink up where it's sticking. And you know, go different directions, make sure it's kind of uniform here. And let me see, I know I have another piece of paper. I'll use this one. And also I got like a I got a paper towel. What is this? It's a towel under here, but by rights, you want something nice and hard and firm because you're gonna be pressing on it. So there we go. I'll pop him down just like that. You don't have to like flick it like that. You can just pop it down. Now I'm gonna get, my hands are a bit dirty. I kind of feel bad about that. This is a bit easier to use the spoon because you're kind of just going over this fabric stuff. It doesn't have the same grab as the rubber. I want to get something really quick so I can show you an example. Like I said, I got a plastic spoon. Not ideal. Okay, in a pinch. This is a spoon that I just grabbed off the print shop wall. As you can see, this spoon started like a brown, and people have been using this to put pressure on their thing, because you can kind of see where it's kind of rubbed away. This is a nice big old spoon. And so this is nice because it's bigger than this little guy. So your regular old wooden kitchen spoon is really what you want here. You can go back and forth. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. I'm not pressing hard. I'm I mean, I'm giving it a little bit of pressure, but not gonna overwork myself because it's such a thin material. And, but you do want to make sure, you know, I mean, you can't hurt to do more, is what I'm saying, because I'd rather make sure that I got everything. And with the bigger spoon, it's a little easier to make sure you go over the edge. I'm gonna go over the edge. Again, it's those edges sometimes that don't get enough pressure and they'll be really light. Now, burnished it. Oh, I didn't put enough pressure. And that's my fault because I was trying to be quick. Let me see what you got. Oh, did you just do that just now? That is cute. I like that. Look at the detail. Different size
Holy
lines.
cow, that's amazing.
I don't know how you did that just then. Wow. Oh,
Bro,
you're
that's
fast,
so good.
Sandra. Wow. See, so, and you put good pressure. That looks pretty good and crisp, hey? So you can kind of see here mine, by rights, I should have spent more time pressing with my spoon. I kind of also want to say, like, if you bake and you have a roller, I don't know, it can't hurt to try it. I feel like that would be kind of nice to take your body, lean over it, and roll over the print with the roller instead of going with the spoon, because that's kind of all on your shoulder. I kind of like this rusticy look, but as you can see, this is what happens if you do not put enough pressure. But also, I could have put more ink down on my inking block here and rolled up my brayer some more. So my ink is starting to dry and thin out. And that's because it's water-based. If you got oil-based ink, it'll hold on a bit longer. But again, the key here is I had a backwards image, carved it out backwards, so that once it's flipped, it looks the way it's supposed to. Same thing as with the text. The text is kind of hard. It's kind of weird to carve out text backwards. And my little Newfoundland. Oh, and also, this is a good example. There's a bit. So at some point along the way, a little speck of something. Let's see, where is that? It's on my roll up. A little speck of something made its way to the ink, to the brayer, and to my paper. So that's a big old, that's very noticeable, right? So there is the key. Now, say you've printed, you're finished, we're all done here. I would take this one, and I would take this one, I'd go to the sink, and I would just wash them with my hand. You got a dish brush or something, or a sponge that you don't mind getting the ink on, that's fine too. Maybe something like not so scratchy, not steel wool or anything like that, because it would probably leave a mark. What else? I'd wash it off, maybe let it air dry so it doesn't get little woolies on it. Wrap them in newsprint, store them until the next time you're ready to do it. Once you've printed and you've got your images, the stuff dries. I mean, it's still wet, but it is drying quick, and some of it is pulled up a bit more. So I had more ink on the fish. You can see it's a bit more crisp versus Newfoundland's, but it's blotchy. And so he is laying flat. I like to leave him for a day. If it's water, leave him alone somewhere for a day. And then they're ready to go. Typically, you'll see printmakers edition stuff. So this is my print. Oh, also, like this, so this fish is not printed in the center. There's more white up here and over here. I could wait for it to dry and either cut the edges or tear the edges to kind of have that look on it that some people like. St. Michael's, for example, has a tear station. And that's where you take your finished prints once they're dry. They got this big metal bar that kind of has a sloped, sharper edge, but you can't hurt yourself on it. And you put it down and you tear it like that. And that's how you get your nice straight line edge. But it kind of has a tattery look, which is really nice, actually. I kind of like it. So say I've cut it, it's dry, it's been sat for a day. A lot of printmakers, what they'll do is they'll edition it. Let me see your sample here. No. Sometimes not everybody likes to write their name on the front. That's okay. Let me see here. Let me see here. What does that say right there? Let me see. Correct me if I'm wrong, Karen. It's been quite a time since I've additioned anything. But I think the name, your name or the addition that goes in the left corner? The title definitely goes in the middle. So I'm gonna call this, I'm writing upside down. I'll call it fish. And addition number to the left, signature. Yeah. That's right. And I guess you could put the date in the right corner. So say I want to addition this guy. Yeah. What's today? I'm gonna put, ooh, is it 10/10? Wow. 10/10. Thank you, Karen. And thank you, Katie. Come on in there. The last thing I'll do is say I printed 20 of these and this was number 4. Well, then I'd put 4-20. Like that out of the addition. Now I wrote that kind of big because by rights, you have a smaller addition number and then you will put your initial in that corner, like Karen said. If you are like doing a test, you could say, oh, it's a proof, or well, it's an artist proof, it's a test. Honestly, I like to just have them addition them by numbers, 1 out of whatever it is, and then you would have it finished off nice and additioned with the date, the title, the edition number out of the set, and your signature, your initials in the corner. And that would be done and ready to go. What I like most about this style is that it's friendly. There's lots of ways to do it in lots of different places. You don't have to come to a print shop, right? And that's very nice. Obviously, of course, we're spread out. And sometimes it's nice to do all this stuff in the comfort of your own home. Yeah, so even after this workshop, I'm gonna go wash these off. And it won't be so bad because it is water-based. And say you got your brayer, so if you're cleaning that, same kind of thing applies. I just kind of use my hand or a soft rag because I don't want to scratch or beat up the surface of the brayer because that's going to show up every time you print. So wash this off, soap and water, air dry. When it comes time to, I'll put my little prints over here. When it comes time to clean off whatever you inked up on, if you got a paint scraper, that can make the process a little easier. Sometimes if I have a lot of ink, I'll use the paint scraper, scrape it up, and like wipe off the paint scraper with a bit of newsprint. But of course, there's nothing wrong with taking this to the sink, which I'm probably gonna do, and using the water, using the soap, and just wiping it off, or using your hand or a rag. And then, you know, I mean, it's gonna stain maybe a little bit, especially red. But again, soap and water. So it's accessible. It's quick, easy. Really, it depends on what you're doing and how in depth you want to go. What else? What else? Any key things that I've learned through trial and error? Does anyone have any thoughts or questions, or what have you made? I said, dude. You're still muted, I think.
It's a very accessible craft for me. I have a physical disability. I use a power chair, so I spend a lot of time in bed. But it's still something that I can access while I'm laying down. Like, obviously I have to be uber safe. Like,
Yes.
I'm not
And
against
then
super like
you got
a
these-
table, but
yeah.
it is something that I don't have to be, like, I'm up in my chair now, but
You don't
it's
have
not
to be.
something I have to be up all the
Mhm.
time for.
Yep.
And I like that.
Exactly.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Like you could totally have like a little like tray and fit
Yeah, I have
everything that you
a
need it
lap
to.
tray that I use in bed.
Mhm. My only advice though is to beware of the little flicky bits getting all over the bed.
Yes.
The little
I
soft pink things are not.
I have a little tray that I put all the things in. Or as many as I can
Daddy.
find now.
What did you say just then? You broke up for a second.
Me?
I only heard the last bit.
Oh, you were talking about the little pink bits, right? Yeah, I have a little tray I put the pink bits in when I'm done, like each slice.
Right.
That way it's easier for cleanup. And then
Mhm.
take a vacuum to the bed after.
Yeah. And
Is
like if
it-
I'll just
Sorry,
flick them
go
to the
ahead.
floor. Oh, sorry, I'll flick them to the floor and I'll just sweep it up after.
Oh yeah, that's smart too. I where I've wanted to do this for a while, I had bought some erasers to practice on because I've seen people do little mini printmaking on the little erasers, and I was like, that's
Mhm.
super cute. And so before the workshop, I was messing around with those, but I forgot about the key principle of the mirroring because I had made a Palestinian flag and Free Palestine, but I forgot to write it backwards. So I need to
Yep.
redo that one. But
Yeah, I've like done like full on things and then realized, oh my, not I sometimes I don't realize until I print the thing that something's
yeah,
backwards and it's like, oh my gosh, all the time. So I
the
understand
whole
that.
time.
What did James say? It is successful for newbies. I also have ADHD. And I get frustrated sometimes. I'll lose my patience with stuff if it has a lot of steps. And sometimes I'm in a mood for it, sometimes I'm not. So this is pretty straightforward too. The learning curve is low. I'm glad you're having fun. You guys want to like ask me more questions in the email or send me pictures of what you've done. There's so many ways. Cynthia, hi.
Hi. I have a question. So I've been busy working away here. And this is my first time doing this. And I'm finding that like when you take the stuff off the top, like it's hard with the tool to get it right at the edge. Like you scoop it and then it just kind of flubbers at the end. And
It's that line, it's the edge is still there.
yeah.
Yeah. I find that with this pink stuff. And all you'd have to do, honestly, I'd probably save it for the last step. Once I carved everything away, you're gonna have to go back right along the edge and like take it up.
Okay. I was wondering if there was a trick to it because I wasn't finding it.
Something with this material, it's something, I guess it's just so soft. And like, yeah, like if I have MDF, I don't know, let me see. Yeah, no, it doesn't seem to matter what angle I put myself at. It's not going right off the edge. So this is a speedy carve particular versus if I got something firm, oh, we can't see it anymore. If I got something firm like this, I can go, this will go right off the edge, right off the edge. But all you'll have to do is go back and take that chunk off. Also, sometimes people, especially with this soft stuff, and sometimes the linoleum is fine too, but if you get the regular floor lino, you might have this fabric on the back, so it can be harder to cut. But there's nothing stopping me from, well, this probably isn't as best of an example. There's nothing stopping me from going with a pair of scissors. I did it here because it was once upon a time a square. You're not going to want to cut right up because it's going to be hard. Do I ever wet the paper? No, actually, I don't usually, but maybe that would be, maybe even spraying it with a mist would help transfer the water-based ink, actually. Now that I think about it, because yeah, like in other forms of print, you wet it to help it transfer. So that's, yeah, you can do that too, honestly. I might try that sometime. I feel like you might get details a bit better if you do that. A zine showing off all our prints, it sure would.
So the other thing I was wondering too is like when you're scooping using that tool, and you're trying to do a line, at the end of the line, it's hard to come out of the line without like turning the whole thing around and trying to scoop it from the other way. So
And sometimes that's the only way you can do it. Like I also find too, like I'll do a motion that's like I'll start maybe a little higher and then I'll kind of whoop myself back up. And if I whoop myself back up, sometimes it'll come out. But honestly, I find sometimes with the soft stuff, I'll only be able to carve so far. And I either got to spin it around and go the other way, like that.
yeah,
Or
that's what I was doing is I was having to go in from the other way.
yeah, right? Like I would try, like even if you kind of scoop, you start and you kind of scoop, kind of go up. If I kind of go in and push myself back up slowly,
Yeah.
I'll be able to get out, but it might taper off to a smaller line.
Yeah, and you sort of have to think about, you can't be impetuous because if you don't think about doing that before you get to the end of the line, then
Exactly.
you kind of
And I
forget
think-
about it.
That seems to be a speedy card thing. The MDF, like sometimes I gotta like go so far. And sometimes if you don't do that kind of like motion. Thank you, Sandra. Bye. Bye-bye. If you don't do the swoop, it might abruptly stop and it kind of hangs on a bit. And then you kind of
Yeah.
end up having to spin it around.
Well, that's what I was finding, is that I was spinning constantly. And then when I was trying to go in the second time to come out of it, I'd have a different line than I had going into it.
Exactly.
But
Try to get that whoop motion.
yeah, so that's what I came up with there.
Oh, look. Oh, y'all did a great job with such little time. See, that's nice. See? So you carved your lines away.
Yeah, so I was
And
trying
around
to think
them.
about what the positive and the negative.
Mm.
And I don't think I was entirely successful because the water, I was wanting the water to show up more, the foreground and the background, but the land and the water all kind of looks the same.
I
Exactly.
love that.
Yeah.
I love it, but I know
Yeah.
what you mean. And that's why some people like to do the multi-block printing with different colors, or they'll have something and they'll cut, like you can brush on thinly different colors of ink. Like if I want his head to be yellow, I could brush on.
Oh, yeah, yeah, like I
Yellow.
don't have to print it. I could just do some other kind of way of adding color, right?
Yeah, you don't have to go to full out roller if you don't
Mhm.
want to. But you have to experiment with it because the risk that you run there sometimes is like maybe there's more paint on this side, or maybe there's a glob and you lose the details. If anything, these are great to make sure that it's going to print nice, even in uniform, because it's inked nice and even in uniform.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've like really used this pink stuff. And it is
Yeah.
great for beginners.
Well, the only thing I've ever done, I mean, I did when I was in high school, I did a regular lino print, I think. You get a little block. This is back in the days where it was pink. I like not pink, but rust colored, I think the lino was. And that's all I've done before. And it was a completely different experience than this pink stuff, I think. I remember that it was quite hard to carve, if I recall.
Like, I mean, the MDF has a fair bit of resistance, but honestly, I find I like the resistance because it helps me have more control. I don't
Mhm.
usually use the speedy carve because sometimes it's too soft.
Yeah, that's what I kind of felt like. I didn't have any control with it. Like I couldn't, it was too like boingy sort of.
It is boingy. It's very spongy boingy.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely maybe a bit friendlier for bigger shapes.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I
And
think you're right.
it comes in different sizes.
Yeah. And I
Karen
think
said, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think with the detail I was trying to get, maybe the pink stuff's not the best choice for it.
It
Maybe.
still came out pretty good. I like it. But I
Yeah.
also have the problem with the positive and negative and trying to see how that would be in my head. The only thing I can think of doing is like drawing it first on a piece of paper and just coloring it in on the paper, black and white, and then
That's
maybe
what I did.
experimenting with it a different way. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think ahead too much because I think that probably would have been a good thing to just kind of do a transfer, but I just kind of drew right on the block, you know?
I
Yeah,
drew
see.
outline and tried to color in the edges where I wanted to leave
Oh,
it
yeah.
Mm.
for the print. So this is the part I have done. I didn't carve the other side yet.
Oh, look.
I carved around it and
That's
basically made two prints. Oh, sorry, that's the dog. Made two prints. This one's obviously not done. I haven't carved it yet and haven't finished drawing, but you good?
Oh,
bud?
yeah. Take your time. Carve it out.
But
Email it to me.
but yeah, this is the carving that I didn't completely follow the
that.
lines I made, but I'm gonna
Oh,
print
well,
it.
you know, I mean,
I'm just getting the paint ready, but
I don't always follow my lines either. You know what I mean? Sometimes I might have a drawing, but it changes as a carve because maybe I've carved
yeah,
maybe something
more of a
wrong and
suggestion.
changed it.
It's definitely
is
something
helpful.
I'd definitely something I'd like to try again.
Oh, yeah.
And um, definitely maybe trying, you said the blue one was harder than the pink one?
If anything, this is probably a little bit closer to the experience you'd probably have with MDF.
I mean,
I actually don't mind this. Because it's not as boingy.
Yeah,
It's not as boingy. The boingy flimsiness of this is sometimes not ideal. Now,
yeah,
if you're in a hurry and you got to make some stamps or something for some event and you got to do it really fast, it's great. But yes, in terms of like me, I like detail, so I lean towards the MDF.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, my
Almost a little bit
experience
stretchy.
with the hard rusty linoleum that we used was 45 years ago. So, I mean, I don't even remember exactly, but it seems to me that I remember you had to really push to get into it.
That must have been harsh. I
Yeah.
like the gray lino. It's not too bad. But
So I guess
it is kind of drier, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, I remember it being dry. Yeah.
so it kind of does that.
Yeah.
Karen said in the chat, she said, have I ever tried jigsaw? I have not tried jigsaw printing. And that is where, yeah, you like if I had this fish, actually, I feel like this fish, if I had this fish and I wanted his head and his tail to be a different color, I guess I would cut him out. Maybe this is kind of thick, but I feel like you would maybe an X-Acto knife or a box cutter is better for this versus scissors. But if I had something thin and I just wanted to cut it out, I'd cut it out and then put the pieces together like a jigsaw puzzle. And all the pieces, they can be inked up different colors. And then you kind of just put them together when it comes down
Oh,
to
right.
print.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have
Yeah.
not tried that. And I think, and because you can mix that up with the reductive method too, and multi-block. I feel like I should try that more, the jigsaw one.
This is how it came out.
Ooh,
Oh,
I
that's
like that.
Yeah.
Oh, see, that's nice. See, and that's kind of like how I like to do mine. I like having the block of color and carving out the lines.
Yeah.
Because if you did it the other way, it would look like a
I
sketch.
I forgot at the bottom and I started carving out the lines out here and then I was like, that's not what I wanted to do. I just wanted the wavy lines to be, so it's a little bit not how I wanted it, but I was just like, whatever, it's my first one in like, I don't
Exactly.
know, 20 years or something, so.
And did you find that some of the lines kind of filled in with ink in that bottom
Yeah.
side?
Yeah, down here, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had too much ink.
See,
And
so
where
you
my
can
lines
tell.
are so shallow, like it I think it doesn't even look like the ink is in there, but I think it's how I push down on it. Cause like in the lines, it
Yeah.
doesn't look like there's, I mean, a little bit, but like not as much as how the lines filled in. So I think it might have been the pressure more so than,
Yeah.
but happy.
It looks great. And like I got ink in mine too, right? And this one's pretty pulled up in there. And if I didn't wash it out and I left it, it could dry and then I'll lose the detail next time. But it does come down to trial and error. That's why you kind of like print a few tests first, adjust how much pressure, adjust how much ink, and then print. And that's why I like to have like a pack of cheap newsprint, because even in here, they got a giant roll of newsprint. And instead of using your nice white paper, you
Yeah.
do your tests on your newsprint.
Yeah.
My brother works at the mill in Corner Brook. I can get newsprint from him.
Oh, whoa, the Cloud Factory?
Yeah, I guess.
All I know is that I didn't call it the Cloud Factory, but people they call it the Cloud Factory, which is kind of cute.
Because of all the yeah.
Steam, I guess the steam.
Yeah, well, they take all of it and they process it, so it's not allowed to come out any other color than white. If it comes out any other color than white, then they're in trouble.
Ooh, it must be cool in there though.
Yeah.
You heading out? Thank you.
Yes,
Oh,
thank you so very much. I was so appreciative of this workshop. I was like, I follow St. Michael's print shop for years, but I'm on the West Coast and don't get to St.
Yeah.
John's but once a decade maybe. So when I saw this, I was like, are you kidding me? Like
yeah.
I was so excited. It was just like the stars aligned.
It is nice. It's nice to have online stuff, and even hybrids, because
Yeah.
people can get to it, and Newfoundland is spread out. Also,
Right.
I'm gonna follow up on email with a copy. And, I don't know if I'll include my print in the collection of photos. I mean, it's okay, I'll take a picture, but it's just a test. But James said earlier that we can make like a zine of all of our images. But if you do
That would
more
be
work,
so cool.
it would be cool. And it could live downstairs at Eastern Edge. They have a little zine library. Or here. But
Yeah, there was a couple, St. Michael's did a zine workshop too a while back, and I wanted to go to that, and I'm like, so many cool things.
I know, right?
But it's
I
still
like
cool that
trying to
it
do hybrid.
exists in our province, because we don't have a lot, but it's very
I
cool.
know. There are places and people out there. Yes, we do
Yeah.
stand an accessible workshop.
Yeah.
Hybrid all the way. But thank you guys for coming. And of course, again, I sent the emails out. You got my email. I'll send out the slides. If you keep working and you find you get an issue with something, or you want to run by more questions or show me what you've done, just reach out to me on email.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye, guys.
Rachel, do you have a resources list to email out to everyone after?
All I did was I linked some of the supplies where you could buy it in the email I sent out before. But I haven't sat down to do like a nice, what would you put in it? Like the Sayers?
Yeah,
Honestly,
yeah.
what I got? I send this to newcomer artists, but I can include this as well. Where'd it go? Oh, I may have deleted it. The Arts Info 101 that talks about Arts and L, and here's the stores around, but it's very kind of St. John's focused.
Mhm.
But yeah, I could put together a little something. Or maybe St.
Awesome.
Michael's has something that they share with their resident artists. Well, I'm hoping people send me more of their images over email.
Looks so nice.
Tina, did you make out okay? Bye, Julia. And I know these little tools. Tina, were you okay after? Tina, email me a picture of your art. Tina, I want to see it. I really hope that tool was okay. I'm sure you're all right after. That's okay. That's okay. You can send it to me later if you want. Get a few different versions. Thank you. And reach out to me on email if you need me. Karen, thank you for your help. Keep trying, Tina. You got it. It's great.
Anytime.
You share with us if you want. And ask me questions on email if you got some.
Thanks, Rachel. Bye.
Bye. All right, I'll stop this recording.